Bam! What is going on, fine hooligans? I feel like it's been a while. But either way, let's not focus on that. Let's live in the present, because now is a gift. That's why they call it a present. Am I right? So, we didn't do last week's Walking Dead recap. I'm going to include it very quick in this one. So you ready? We're going to do lightning round. Let's do it! So last week's episode was called Omega. If you're not familiar with that, usually means the end. Alpha, beginning, Omega, end. And again, like, it kind of symbolizes a lot of things, like the end of, like, you know, the world, because we do get a little bit of backstory as far as Alpha and Lydia go. The end of what we thought this one enemy was. So it's the Omega of a few things. Right away, for all my fellow gaming nerds, probably noticed the Death Stranding tattoo on Norman Reedus. Thought that was very cool. If you're not familiar with what that is, it is an upcoming game. Norman Reedus is in it. He's like the main character. Mads Mikkelsen is in it, as well as the very talented Troy Baker. Trust me, if you've played video games, you've heard Troy Baker. So I have my notes on my phone here. We are just gonna go through them real quick. So with Alpha's story, we see that they've survived, like, since the beginning, like whenever this like apocalyptic event happened. Again, we hear, like, Lydia had mentioned she was like 5 or 6 around this time, but you never know, because memories can be a little shaky. In the beginning, it actually reminded me of the Sanctuary for a quick second, so that'd be kind of cool if that's where they like first ended up. And we actually see that, like, in a way, Alpha tried to be a good mom, or did she? The moment when it said, "World's over, I'm doing what I want now," that is the moment when Alpha realizes that, like, she can play by her own rules now, and she doesn't have to, like, do and live this same life. You know what I mean? But there's an awesome twist that happens with this backstory that is done so well. And again, it goes into, like, how, you know, this season, the writing, the acting, it's just so much. Even like the visual effects have been stepped up. It's so bueno. And a little cool thing that they did, like, her parents would sing Lydia the Tattooed Lady, which, I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, a Marx Brothers song, if I remember correctly. And yeah, it's something that I actually sing to my pooch. I sing Kaiju the Fluffy Lady. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I've always liked that song. Robin Williams sang it in a movie as well. Can't remember which one. Either way, let's move on. When Lydia says hunger's a gift, that also shows just, like, the harsh environment that she's been raised in. Lydia also feels like Carol is a lot like her mom because of how strong and protective they are, like, through talking with Henry and everything. And it is that same thing. You don't want to mess with Carol, but you also don't want to mess with Alpha. With last week's episode, Omega, we see that kids have that connection to each other and they explore that. But it goes further, because it's not just kids who tend to have a connection with each other and adults will talk to each other. It's people that have grown up or have been through hell and they've been raised in these shitty situations, that those people tend to connect with each other. It doesn't matter, like, where you are, you know what I mean? And because of that, Daryl might actually understand Lydia a little bit more than the others because of, like, what he's been through. Also, with Lydia, talking about her, like, upbringing is actually, like, a thought and sentiment that is always, like, echoed throughout this show. If you stay soft, you die. That's been something that many characters have said. We have to stay strong or you die. So it's actually interesting that, like, even this far past, you know, where we were in season 4, season 5, people that's still their thought. That's still their way of thinking. And we also see this is how, like, she views certain people's death from her life and everything. And, like, if they were stronger, then they probably would still be around. And Henry, like, Henry, it's different too, because you see the differences. Like, Henry has grown up in this world, but definitely not in the same environment that Lydia has. We even see an interesting parallel with her and Negan. Whereas with Negan, there was just, like, nothing for him. With Lydia, there was too much for her. It was overwhelming, and she just couldn't, like, grasp it. And again, with Henry, like, kind of having this little crush on her, it's gonna get him into trouble. More on that later. Back at 6. Yumiko and Magna, like, their group, they mentioned Coalport, which I'm pretty sure Coalport is in England. So I'm wondering if they were overseas at some point, shit happened over there, and their whole thinking was, you know, if we had a boat, we had a choice. No, let me try that again. If we had a boat, we have a choice. So I'm wondering if things happened overseas, they came to America to try and get away from it and realized that it's actually a worldwide thing. So that's actually a little interesting. Oh, and I noticed in last week's episode that Daryl had like the rip on his vest as well, like as if it's been sewn in the shape of an X, much like the X scar on his upper back, good folks. We need a backstory. I want to know what happened. As always now, with The Walking Dead, the walkers aren't whispering, but the whisperers are walking, and they've walked themselves up to Hilltop. Let's roll into this week's episode. Thanks for sticking with me here, folks. Yeah, I know this might be a bit of a longer one. I apologize for that, but I hope you enjoy. Let's do this. So, we find out that Jerry and Amelia, they had themselves a little family. And it just made my heart warm. Oh, like, oh my goodness. Just how can you not love Jerry? As like, I don't know. If you don't like Jerry, there's something wrong with you. Flashback, we see Tara meet up with King Ezekiel, Jerry, and Carol. And we find out that when she left Alexandria, she actually took more supplies than she was supposed to. And she took something else from, like, Michonne and everyone. A charter of rights and freedoms to be signed from the different communities. This was a path forward. This was something for all of the communities to come together and figure it out together. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know. Unfortunately, it never got signed. But some people stay hopeful. They hope to get it signed at a fair. There's just so much optimism about an event that is probably going to bring a lot of blood. So with this episode, we have Ezekiel and Carol and everybody going on a supply run, and then we have the situation at Hilltop. So I'm going to talk about the Ezekiel stuff, then we're going to get to Hilltop. We find out that they actually don't know about the Whispers, and they don't know that Jesus is even dead yet. There's a lot that they have to, they got to catch up on. Because they are so far out of the loop right now. And you can't really blame anybody because, like, the Whisperers are such a crazy, like, enemy that they've never faced before, that their focus is on that. We see Ezekiel looking over, like, that charter of rights and freedoms that never got signed, and he's sitting in his theater, and the lights are out, and it's just, it's very cold, it's very dim, it doesn't evoke the same power and the same, like, optimism that it did before with him. So while they're on their supply run, there's a little bit of a side mission that they want to take. There's a theater nearby, and they have a projection lamp. They used to have one in the kingdom, but it's been about 5 years or so since the last projection lamp, like the bulb at least, blew out. So if they can get this bulb, they can bring back that love of watching movies together as a family in the kingdom, and that sense of community back to, like, the kingdom. Sorry, this is repetitive a little bit. And again, another reason to love Jerry, it's movie time. Like, Carol was just not having any of his shenanigans. She, like, it definitely feels like Jerry is almost like their adopted son, too. Like, it's just, they have Henry and they have Jerry. Carol is definitely coming off like the mom of the group in a lot of ways. I don't know. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh. There's an interesting thing that is said in this episode, because they get into the theater and there's a bunch of walkers in one of the, like, the cinemas and everything. Unfortunately, the bulb got dropped in that theater, so they have to figure out a way to get the walkers out. They say that they can use the front stairs on either side as choke points. Now, that is also an episode title for later this season. There's only 2 episodes left, so good folks. A choke point is also an actual, like, military move that's been used. It's basically, think, like, if you have 2 mountain ranges right here, you're gonna send in a few troops to get your enemy's attention. Those troops are gonna drag them out within this little point. So your few troops get out and you're all good, and the rest of your army's there, waiting. And all of your enemies are just coming through this one single spot. That is the choke point. where all these enemies are just in this one little group and you can just pick them off basically. Which makes me wonder what that means for an episode later. Shit. But another thing that Ezekiel wants to do is get one of those poster boxes that you see on the wall at the theaters so he can frame the Charter of Rights and Freedom. And thankfully, mission's successful. But I can't help but feel like because it's successful and things are kind of going well, that's playing into the whole not gonna work out well for folks real soon. That's how Game of Thrones and Walking Dead works, folks. Soon as shit starts going good for you, you're probably gonna die. Alright, back to the Hilltop situation. Samantha Morton. My goodness, I have been singing her praises a lot for this role. This episode really shows it. Her as Alpha is fucking amazing. She is powerful as much as she is scary as a leader. Like, oh my goodness. Oh, and just so I don't forget, anybody who's like been around little kids a lot and you've had to watch their programs, or parents that may have seen these programs on Treehouse, this little lovable rabbit here and this lovable walker whisperer, same person. And we see with Alpha, like, again, the way, like, she leads the Whisperers and the way, like, the Whisperers work as a community is, she says, like, we're animals. Animals live out here. That's why they don't have these, like, walls and these houses and everything. There's something with a baby in this episode. It's one of those things, like, it's shocking because you're like, oh, like, you know, how could someone just think about, like, a baby like that? Again, these aren't regular people. If they think like this kid can't be quiet, the dead will silence it. That's natural selection. If we can't get you to be quiet, then they take you. That's their mindset. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything for you folks with that whole thing. It leaves on a good note though, for someone. One thing I want to include, like the Whisperers, honestly, for me, they look like they're plucked right from the comics. It looks so bueno. And that, again, that goes to the visual effects and the prosthetics and everything. Like Greg Nicotero and everybody are just knocking it out of the park with this season. And it's actually really cool to see, like, they know how to, like, manipulate the herds, at least a little bit. And with Connie being trapped outside and everything and having that scene where she's trying to get back in and she has to deal with these walkers around her. If you're not familiar, Connie is the deaf lady. The reason I bring that up is because the sound editing, oh my goodness, like this was so good. Like I don't know how to describe it. It just, everything felt so muffled but like echoey and surrounding at the same time, and you didn't know which way anything was coming from. It was actually like a little like fucking anxiety just to watch it. So like for the audio department, good job. We gotta jump back to Henry and Lydia. Alpha wants her little girl back. Well, Henry's got a crush on her. Remember when I said it's gonna get him in trouble? Well, he decided to break her out. No, sir. That's not the way this world works. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, yes, like some kids have grown up in this world and they've had to grow up completely different. But at the end of the day, they're still like teenagers or they're still kids. So they don't fully understand the way like these groups have to work and the way certain things are going to go in this world. They're going to lead with their heart and like their emotions a lot. You know what I mean? Oh. With the, like, skipping a few things, not wanting to give, like, a lot away for some folks, with the slap that we see. That was purely a power move. And to show, I don't give a fuck about you guys judging me. This is how I do shit. Again, Samantha Morton, so good as Alpha. Ending for this episode was actually really interesting because like with Daryl saying like, you know, the world is shit sometimes. You just have to live with it. Then we get a montage of seeing these moments of when the world actually isn't shit. Because that's the way it goes. When people say the world is shit, that's what we hear. That's what, like, you know what I mean? When it's these good moments, they go unsaid. It's just these moments that kind of exist in the world that if you look for them, they're there. But there doesn't really need to be anything said, or a lot of the times they go without any sort of attention to them because people feel the world is shit and you just have to live with it. But it's not. As much as we do like to think the world is shit, there's just bad things that happen in this giant world that we live in, at the same time that there's really, really awesome things and really beautiful things that are happening. And you might think I'm corny for saying that, but I'm definitely not the only one in the world that like feels like that. But that doesn't mean that everybody can live with it all the time, because Henry and his crush, again, getting him into trouble, gotta go find her. Gotta go find her. You know what I mean? It's gonna be a lot of problems. I think this is where we're gonna get the Daryl and Beta fight scene. BT dubs, Beta is coming in next week's episode. I am so fucking excited for that, good folks. Oh goodness. Just the episodes this week and last week, I don't know, just again, season 9 as a whole, like, if you stopped watching at the Rick Grimes situation, you're missing a lot of great stories. And honestly, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I don't really, like, I don't even find myself wondering, well, how would Rick handle this? Or what would Rick do? Or, like, I don't even find myself thinking about Rick Grimes unless there's, like, a callback to it or there's something that kind of reminds you of it. You know what I mean? But yeah, the stories are so good. And the way, like, everybody is just kind of, I don't know. Again, the acting all around, the writing, just, so bueno. Thank you for sitting through this, if you did. I know this was a bit of a longer one, but I wanted to do at least a quick recap for the last one so we didn't miss anything. I appreciate you folks checking this video out. I really, really do. Hopefully you enjoyed it enough. You might want to give it a little click there. If you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Come join the Hooligan squad. Just doing a lot of silly shit and trying to add a laugh to a couple folks' day. That's the goal. So yeah, hope you folks enjoyed. Mucho, mucho love for checking it out. Mwah, mwah, mwah for you beautiful fat cheese. My quiet kids, freaks, and weirdos. For the love of everybody, could you keep being weird? Thanks. Appreciate it.